Hello, bonjour. My name is Kyla Farmer. I'm here visiting Detroit from Toronto. I was born and raised in Ottawa on Algonquin territory, unceded Algonquin territory. My mother's from California. My father's from Nova Scotia and Ontario. I have African, Indigenous, Turtle Island, I have African, Turtle Island, and Jamaica Indigenous, and a lot of European ancestry. And I'm in Detroit this weekend because I wanted to attend and engage in the North American Social Solidarity Economy Forum. I'm an economist, I'm an artist, I'm a systems thinker, I'm a community resource connector, I'm the homie, I'm the sisterin, and it's been a pleasure connecting with people in people in Detroit and everyone else who came to the forum, and there was a lot of really great discussion that we had, and I'm here for another day, so I'm here to just get to know, the community, social, environmental, economic context of the region and connect with folks and hopefully continue those connections throughout our lives, build bridges between Canada and US relations because we're just separated by this foolishness of a border. And the more you know, the less you need, but it's a process still. So what's your first question?
Okay, Kyra. I noticed that you were pulling no punches at that forum. You were asking some difficult questions, some questions that didn't seem to hit the floor until you voiced them. You were, I remember when I first encountered you, that was Saturday. And it was at the panel there, and they were talking about social solidarity economy
in Quebec.
Quebec, right? And what was the question that you asked?
I gave so it was the director of the Global Social Economy Forum that's happening this year in Montreal, and then this other woman who was part of Shania or some kind of network of networks, and then their other colleague. Two of the women were white, visibly white, and one of them, I think she was probably Persian or Arab, or there's like her name. And they were talking a lot about social innovation and sustainable development, and they seemed like they had a big thirst for relations with institutions, politicians, banks, institutions that are built off of our ancestors' backs, are not made for us to navigate well through, and, are some of the vehicles and tools of oppression. So when I was watching that presentation, I was just like seeing right through it, and they gave a really dry, like I was yawning during their presentation. It was also a long day, so factor that in too, but it reminded me of really dry and like non-specific, buzzwordy type of university or other kind of organizational presentations. And I've worked in social innovation communities, I've worked in sustainable development communities, I've worked in social entrepreneurial, social enterprise communities, and there's a lot of flaws and fraudulence in those communities. So I wanted to kind of just point out that aspect of that whole world that I'm well aware of, and also not allow everyone in the room to think that Quebec is some kind of like, or Canada is some kind of like non-racist haven, because it ain't. And there's an ethos in Canada for the omission and erasure of Black history. There's a lot of anti-Blackness. There's a lot of racism towards Indigenous people, obviously. There's a lot of oppression and racism and prejudice against other groups of people of color. brown, red, and yellow, black, brown, red, and yellow, to put it simply. So I wanted to kind of just speak to that and let the people know and ask them a question and see if they were gonna take that opportunity to but they didn't. So I gave a little context of how, in a lot of ways, social innovation and sustainable development is the new kind of greenwashed, like pretty and trendy, modern colonial project in continuation of the 500-year project that we're living in. I wanted to point out how those movements are also not inclusive and perpetuate racism and oppression and anti-blackness in really like, what's the word, like covert, or like there's a word where it's like you can't really see it. I forget the word, but it's like it's there. It's not obvious because like what they're saying sounds great. Oh, entrepreneurs and co-ops and blah 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 blah. But when you really look at it, it's all white people, or it's just all these other things, And for a white, tall, seemingly privileged, blonde hair, blue-eyed white woman to be the director of the Global Social Economy Forum, I was like, she doesn't represent what those 4 words mean to me together. And I know there's lots of people of color and black folk in Quebec and in Montreal. So I asked them, I gave them a little bit of background in my thoughts, based on like some of the things I just said. And I asked them, what are your considerations and reflections on how race and class are interconnected or intersectional to social innovation, to sustainable development, and the work that they do? And so what are some of their reflections and considerations on that? And what do they feel they can do moving forward to get better at that kind of thing? And then I also specified for them to not tokenize people. I don't want to hear who's already where doing what. Like, oh, well, we have, my friend is black and we have this one, brown woman on the board. And like, I don't want to hear that. I want to hear their reflections and their considerations on race and class and the work that they do in the Quebec context. And what are they aware of, and what do they want to get better at doing moving forward to mitigate the isms and the schisms. So the thing that I specified them not to do, that's how they started off answering the questions. So the director, she's spewing off her like just garbage, and she's fumbling as well because she has no idea what I'm asking or how to answer the question, obviously. So then when she's just like blah blah blahing, I'm like, I get back on the mic, I'm like, no, that's not what I asked you to say. And then I re-asked the question, or like simplified it, asked it in a different way that was maybe more absorbable and accessible for her to understand. And then I can't remember if she passed on the mic to her colleague or still tried to answer, but it was just really weak. It was a really weak answer. So them being exposed to their lack of understanding to what I'm speaking to, they revealed it themselves. I already knew that it was there, but they revealed it themselves. And then the woman, who I think is Persian or Arab or Middle Eastern or something, she took the mic and she went on about how there's a lot of challenges, and we've got this program for women entrepreneurs, and it's just like, okay. And then this other guy posed another question, and then I just sat back down, and it was just like, eye roll worthy, but I kind of expected that kind of answer. So then once that Q&A period was done, the woman, the 2 women, their colleague who was pressing the arrows back and forth for the PowerPoint presentation, she comes up to me, seemingly white woman, brown hair, blue eyes. And she's like, blah, 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 challenges, and we gotta, she's being very general, And like 2 weeks ago, there was a black man who was shot by police in Montreal. A lot of my friends out there have told me about the systemic racism. Quebec has one of the worst like slavery and racism reputations in Canada. Black women and black folks have been burned and hung and all sorts of things in Quebec. Indigenous people, like it goes on and on and on. But there's this mental program, because I heard from a lot of folks at the forum in Detroit that those same Quebec people were like, yeah, or they were separating themselves from the US, and like racism is not like it is in Canada, like it is in the States, and like perpetuating that whole program. So, I can't be having that. I can't be having them, representing properly for themselves, for whiteness, but misrepresenting the reality and the truth. So, as someone who's African can have been in Canada for 200 and something years, after, emancipation from slavery, but still going through indenturement and racism and the rest of it, and knowing a lot of BIPOC, Black, Indigenous people of color wherever I go, and in Ottawa and Toronto, like for them to be kind of like making it seem like that's what Canada is like is not acceptable. So anyway, so the laptop Lucy, as I call her, she comes up to me and she's like, blah blah blah, and then the brown lady comes up and she's like itching to like start saying more, and then like more and more people start surrounding us, and then I see the director kind of like walking back and forth, and then she stands behind laptop Lucy. It's not very globally social of her to do that. And so then, brown woman, like she's getting into it, and we're having like a discussion, everything's cool. We're just talking from each other's perspectives and experiences and like sharing.
Is this the brown woman or the brown-haired woman?
Both.
Okay.
And then the blonde woman was standing behind the brown-haired woman. And so then we're like talking about something, like I forget, and then at one point I'm just like, yeah, like, because for me, like the thing about your presentation and the work that you do is you're clearly like very closely tied to and promoting relationships with government, with institutions, with financial institutions, with several different levels of government, and those are the systems that perpetuate oppression. Like I said something along those lines, and I'm like, for me and who I am, Global Social Economy Forum is not represented by that, nor a blonde, blue-eyed, privileged woman. That's just how I feel about it. That's what I was sharing at the moment. And like I said before, I have European and African and Indigenous ancestry. My mom's white from California. And so the white, brown-haired woman, after I said that, she says, that's racist. You're racist. And I like moving between wanting to just laugh my ass off, moving between wanting to cuss this woman out to the nth degree, and then all sorts of other things in between and around those emotions. I was just like, no. You have no idea what you're talking about. You cannot, as a white woman, you cannot say that anybody is racist except for yourself and your fellow white people. I am white. You cannot tell me I am racist. I'm talking about my own people. I'm talking about how I feel about something. Saying that this woman doesn't represent that for me. But they were all getting very sensitive about that instead of like not being sensitive and defensive. And it's like, and I remember we were saying like, well, yeah, if like colonialism is what you want in the world and white supremacy, then for sure this girl represents that for you, for a global social whatever form. But for me, it's not. Like, I'm about African folks who are everywhere around this world, Indigenous folks, and every, what? So I was just like, you don't know what you're talking about, blah, blah, blah. Like, I was just going in, but like calm. And then everyone around us was like, whoa, shit was going down. And then she's like, you need to look up the definition of racism. I'm like, I'm disengaging. You're not allowed to talk to me. Bye. And then I just turned around, and then other folks handled the rest of that conversation. And then today, the brown girl from that group, the Quebec group, she came up to me when I was like standing by, like throwing something out in the garbage, and I was walking out to have a smoke, and she's like walking with me, and she's like, we need to talk. And I'm like, no, you know? And she's like, yeah, but that's more, if we talk, that's more productive, whereas you're being destructive. I'm like, so yesterday your colleague calls me racist, and now you're calling me destructive? No, bye. And then I just like went through a door, and then she's still walking after me, and she's like, I'm talking about conversation and blah, blah. So like these women don't get it. And so whoever they're working with, whatever, don't get it. And until they get it, and it's not my labor and it's not my time, it's not my energy, which is all really precious, or a lot of other folks, it's not up to us to educate them. Like they can go and do all this research and academic and so they can do that work too. And they have to do that, and white people have to do that themselves within their own communities. Of course, there's conversations, there's dialogue, there's sharing that we can have amongst people. Obviously, we have to work together as well, but that work, like, we don't have time to labor ourselves to do that work. You know what I mean? But for me, because I am black and white, you know, and indigenous, like, there are certain white people that I will have those conversations with, or share some resources, or just like start off a little bit. But for the most part, my time and my energy and my skills and everything and my knowledge and whatever is going to be used building with community and resisting things and creating new, you know, how to move forward. So, you know, she's saying all that, and I'm just like, fuck, whatever. And then the guy who's also from Quebec, and I've seen him around before, and this is another thing about male privilege and patriarchy that I can't fucking stand, that happened a lot at the it's so normalized. So, but it happened a lot. And then with this guy, I'm like walking to the table, some kind of session, whatever, and he's like putting his hand out because he feels entitled to touch my body because he's reaching for my shoulder. So I'm just like, and I just like fucking like out of the way, and I'm just like, no, and I walk away from him, and he's just like, oh. So like the last person I want to talk to at that kind of forum is a white man, is a privileged, not woke white man. But that's the thing with infiltrators, you know, like they feel that they're doing work, that they're doing important work. And in some respects, yes, it is very important, because they're talking about community economic development. They're talking about co-ops. They're talking about alternative frameworks and financial tools and instruments and systems and whatnot. But it's not inclusive. And it's like feminism. It's like there's feminism for white women, and then there's feminism for the rest of us. So, you know, and like, so many people in the forum came up to me after that question and was like, girl, we need to, and they're like, everyone just kind of wanted to talk, you know, and thanked me for asking that question, because I think what anyone experiences at conferences and forums and gatherings is like, you always want to go deeper on like certain specific topics, you know, or like ask questions in a different way, or like, you know. So I've gone to a lot of these things, and through like talking with people in community and my own like self-directed education, I've understood through trial and error and through like knowledge building and gaining the importance of asking really good questions. And I felt like I asked a really good question, you know. So they completely missed out an opportunity because of their white fragility. And I'm just looking at the brown girl like, really, girl? But she's the one who's like, we need to talk. And like, if there would be someone that I would talk to, it would be her. But she's very assimilated, it seems, you know? And like, she came to the defense when she really didn't have to, you know? Like, so it's just like, I'm not trying to talk to those people. And I don't care how bad that reflects on me or how I'm being whatever. Like, it don't matter. If people want to diss me or call, like, say that how I feel about that is not whatever. It's just like, you don't understand my philosophy, and you just want to talk about this thing that you feel that I'm doing is wrong, instead of talking to me about what we can do and what we can actually talk about. Like, I'm not gonna spend my time talking about that kind of shit. I just did right now, but it's just indicative of, you know, how there's infiltrators and people who aren't authentic in spaces where people are talking about really real shit. You know, we cannot live without our lives. That's from To Be Young, Anita Africa. And if folks like that are going to react to questions like that when they're in spaces where like nobody's got time for them to be or act or talk like that, then, and they want to criticize people like me and like say that I'm racist and destructive, it's like, if that's what you need to feel better, then like, okay, bye. We're not going to be building. You know, keep quenching your thirst for institutional partnerships and funding and having your really nice nonprofit organization salary. There are a lot of white women that do that kind of shit, and I've worked with enough of them, and I'm sick and tired of it. And I'm sure a lot of people all over North America feel the same way.
All right. Thank you so much for
Thank you.
your time.
Thank you. Thank you, sister.